So there is Russian food. They are very, very health conscious. Everything that you eat is natural. They eat a lot of grains. It's funny because they'll even eat a lot what we they call buckwheat, or we call it horse feed. You'll eat that a lot. Everything is very natural and very healthy for you. I found that I actually lost about 30 pounds on my mission. And the food is very much so that it lasts with you all day. Like, and they will feed you till you are stuffed. You'll eat a lot of potatoes, a lot of grains, and a lot of stuff that is fried or cooked in the oven and whatnot. My favorite dishes are definitely, you've got borscht, as well as there's a it's like Russian shish kebab that they grill up called shashlik, but it is hands down better than any American shish kebab you have ever had. They marinate it in mayonnaise. Everything has mayonnaise on it, and so if you don't like mayonnaise, you will learn to like mayonnaise, or else you'll offend a lot of people. But I just loved how, you know, how you could eat and you would be full for a long time. It's very bland, not a lot of spices, nothing is ever spicy. I will admit there's probably quite a few more things I don't like about Russian food than the things that I did, but I learned to love it. And yeah. Let's see. When you hear the words pie or cake in Russian, they are not what you think of in America. You hear of cake in America and you think of moist, you know, like angel food cake or whatever. In Russia, cake means a giant waffle cookie covered in chocolate. And a pie is not what you have on Thanksgiving. It is a bread filled with cabbage or meat that you'll have as a dessert. So it's like a meat pie that's just, and so you'll think of something sweet and you'll never get it. They don't understand sweets as well as we do, but Russian ice cream and yogurt and dairy is so much better than American because they don't pasteurize any of their stuff. So it goes bad really quick, but it has so much better flavor and whatnot. Their ice cream and their dairy is really good, except milk tastes kind of gross, but but their yogurt and everything is good.
I really loved the Russian food. Russians, they love warm things, obviously, because it's cold there. They think it's really bad to drink cold drinks. So, of course, they always have their tea. They'll always give you tea and little chocolates or little cookies or something. That's every lesson you go to, you have tea. They love their soups as well, just because they're warm. They have these things called Blini, which they're kind of like crepes, but they will have big, you know, Blini parties, and they'll invite the missionaries over, and they love making Blini. So I really liked those. They also have, I loved they just have like little bakeries, and their bread and their little pastries is so good. So much better than here in America. So much fresher. So I really loved that. They also have these little things called pierogi, which is kind of like, you can have lots of different things in it. Potatoes, vegetables, meat, different things, rice, and then it's wrapped up like in dough, sort of, and then they fry it. So it's almost kind of like, if you've ever heard of chicken pillows, it's like that, but I loved those pierogi. It's really yummy.
The people there, they love tea, like any kind of tea. We had to be careful because they like to try and give you black tea or green tea, and it's against the word of wisdom, but we can drink herbal tea. So, yeah, whenever we went to an appointment, they would say, well, let's sit down and have tea, and we'll have cookies. And so that's mainly what we ate for appointments, was tea and cookies. But other times they would make us, the members or investigators, they would actually make us meals. One thing that they're famous for there is a soup called Borscht, and that it looks purple. It's like a purple soup, and it's just potatoes, onions, carrots, beets, and they put in like beef or chicken or something like that. And then you always have a slice of rye bread or some kind of bread. I remember one time I went to a restaurant and got borscht, and they asked me if I wanted bread, and I said no. And the cashier lady just looked at me weird, and she's like, "Why don't you want your bread?" So you need to eat your bread with the borscht. They also have something called Blini there. We call it crepes here, but they call it Blini there. And it's just a crepe, and you can put whatever you want on it. Usually they have it very sweet, like with sugar, with honey, jam. Other times you can put like eggs or potatoes in it, whatever you want. They love their sweets there. I think I've become addicted to chocolate since I've been home because they eat so much chocolate there. I just remember we would talk to people on the streets, like especially the grandmas, the older ladies, and they would just give us chocolates or candies. And so we would just snack on candies all day. But because we're walking everywhere, you burn it off. So you don't have to worry about gaining weight there. They love potatoes there, especially in the winter, because not a lot of stuff grows there. And so, yeah, we had a lot of potatoes. I remember our house lady for our apartment, she would come in with just these giant bags of potatoes and just, "Here you go, girls." And so we'd have potatoes for months in the winter. But in the summer, because it's a lot warmer, a lot more things can grow. And so they have like cucumbers and tomatoes and a lot of fresh fruits like peaches and pears and things like that. So in the summers, you can have a lot more variety of food, but in the winters, it's a lot of potatoes and cabbage and onions and beets.
So I love Russian food. I miss it so much. A lot of people talk about like weird, gross foods on the mission, and Russia doesn't really have a lot. There are a few kind of weird foods. The number one is holodets. That's one most missioners talk about. It's kind of like this meat jello that's not very good. It's just kind of weird. And it's not like gross. The flavor's okay, but you've got like bits of like cartilage and stuff in there that you have to get out. Russians leave bones in food. It's like you'll have chicken soup and you have to like eat around the bones in the soup and stuff. But it adds to the flavor. So Russian food's pretty bland. It's not like super spicy or very strong flavors, but it's really good. Especially the bread, all the dairy products, ice cream, sour cream. The milk itself tastes a little bit different, but it grows on you. Yeah, I miss Russian food. While I was there, we didn't eat with members or anything. We didn't have dinner appointments very often at all. I only had maybe a few times where I ate food cooked by Russians. But we would try to make kind of our own versions of Russian foods in the apartment. The one thing that I really brought home is borscht, which is a soup. It's got beets and chicken and potatoes and cabbage, and it's delicious. But it's we've got a recipe that's been perfected by generations of missionaries. So we would make a huge pot of borscht on P-Day on Monday, and then we'd eat it all week long. We'd just put it on the balcony to refrigerate it and go out and scoop some into a little pot and heat it up for lunch and dinner. And after like 3 days, it was just perfect. It was so good and kind of delicious flavor. But yeah, I look back at Russia and I was like, I miss the mayonnaise because it's so good. Russian mayonnaise is amazing, and you'll see what I mean when you get there. And the bread is so good, especially the dark ryes and stuff, those dark breads. Really good stuff. And then they've got all sorts of seasonings. They've got ketchup like you would not believe. You got like ketchup with peppers and stuff in it, and ketchup, like different flavors of ketchup. Try them all. They're really good. There's one that's kind of like salsa almost, so we use that as like a salsa type thing if we made tacos. And yeah, don't be afraid of the Russian food. It's delicious. There's a lot out there to experience. Cheeses, sausages. It's really good. So that's something to look forward to. Russian food, it's fantastic.
One that I really loved, it's like, imagine a pot sticker, but then it's like on steroids. So it's like a hybrid between a pot sticker and like a dumpling, okay? And it's just like stuffed to the brim, and it's like, it's a little pinch at the top where I guess when it's all folded at the top, and it has like 80 psi of just like food just ready to burst into your mouth. And it's usually stuffed with cabbage that's been shredded or sauteed in like oil and grease. the grease probably comes from the meat that's in it too. So it's like this cabbage and grease that's cabbage and meat that's fried together. And I love those so much, and they're so good to eat. The names escape me, so you'll have to find out what they're called. But man, I just was so hungry, I just grabbed it and ate. Didn't even care what it was called. They have these little food kiosk stands, and one of them is called belyash. And belyash is like so imagine you ever had scones before? So it's pretty much like batter or like dough that's been deep fried. But how they do it is somehow they get into it like this like slice of like beef that's like solid, not like shredded beef, but like a slice of beef, and then the vegetables like cabbage, peppers, and tomatoes, and then somehow, some way, they get this sauce into it, like drenched into it, and they slap it together, and it looks like a half moon or something, and it's this big sucker that's been deep fried. And it's just like heaven, because you take a bite and you're just like, this is probably not the healthiest thing ever, but I'm hungry, and it's a culture food there. A lot of it is made or has been implemented from foreigners that have moved to Vladivostok from a lot of the Stan countries back in Central Asia over there. And belyash is what it's called. So it's like an enclosed sandwich, and it kind of looks like maybe like a calzone is like a distant cousin of it or something, and that was really, really tasty.
They have shawarma, which it's not necessarily Russian, I guess you could say. It came from some of the other countries in the USSR, but they take a bunch of chicken and they cook it on a big rack, kind of like roasting a chicken, but they'll just take chicken breasts and chicken thighs and roast them, and then they cut off meat off from that, and then they put tomatoes and cucumbers and with kind of like a ranch dressing, and they put that in pita bread, and it's really good. And that's something that I never had members really make that, but you can pick it up at different vendors on the street, and you just have to be careful which vendor you pick it up from, though.
Obviously the big one is borscht, which is a cabbage and beet soup. It's bright red, and it's kind of the traditional Russian, Ukrainian food that everybody has. It's really good. I really enjoyed it a lot. Also, we had a lot of pirashki, which is like little turnover pies. They put meat inside, they put cabbage, they'll put apples, they'll put cherries, they'll put liver. I had liver ones. So pretty much anything that's in your fridge, you can put it in these little breaded pies, and it's a snack or it's a meal. It's just, they have them all the time. You can buy them just on the street in little stands. They have them, and yeah, they're really good. Also blini, which is kind of like the French crepes. Same thing, it's just kind of like a crepe, but they put all sorts of things inside. They'll put meat, they'll put fruit, they'll put, chocolate or mushrooms, just everything possible will go in these little crepes. And also it's a snack or a meal that you can just get on the street. Members would give it to us all the time, and so it's just a really popular food there.
I think the thing I love most about Russian food is how fresh it is. People really live off their land there. Almost every Russian has what they call a dacha, or just a little house out in the countryside. And on that same land that their dacha is on, they have a little garden. And in the summer, they live there almost most of the time. They come in and out of the city in the summer from their dacha, and they'll bring back their food, and they'll store it for the winter, and they'll eat it. And I just liked how fresh all of their food seemed to be. Potatoes, beets, carrots, everything. They all grew it themselves. And even in the stores, it seemed like a lot of their produce was a lot more fresh, or I guess new than some of the produce that we buy in America.
Russian food's pretty interesting. They're more of like a meat and potato kind of nation, where they stick to the basics. They're not too fancy. You know, they can get fancy, but most of the time their salads consist of like a chopped up tomato and chopped up cucumber and chopped up onion just mixed up with like a heaping glob of mayonnaise on top. So there's that. I think one of my favorite things though was something called pyrashki, and it's kind of like a little pastry, but inside they stuff it with you know, they can stuff it with hamburger or they stuff it with cabbage. That was my favorite, because walking around in the wintertime, you stop and they have these little kiosks on the side of the road, and you pay like maybe 30 cents and you get like this pastry this big with steamed cabbage in it, and you're biting into it and the steam's going everywhere. It's just like a, I don't know how to say it, idealistic winter, you know. There's lots of varied foods there. Like you'll have your soups, you'll have your meats and potatoes. They have these things called pelmeni, and they're kind of just like Russian dumplings. And sometimes they'll serve it in soup, sometimes they'll serve it on the side. And those are really tasty. You just can't eat too much because, yeah, it's just bad side effects.
Some unique foods that I was exposed to. They have a drink that's called Kefir, and it is similar to what we know as buttermilk, but they drink it straight. Some people drink it straight here too, I guess, but I tried that and it was disgusting. Great for buttermilk pancakes though. Another drink that's called kvass, and kvass is similar to like a non-alcoholic beer here. It's made from bread. But it's kind of carbonated too, but it's also disgusting. But something that they really enjoy, especially those who are trying to get away from, you know, alcohol or whatever. They would still have their kvass, which tasted similar to alcohol. Some foods that I ate, there's they love pig fat. There's this, it's called sala, and it's just straight pig fat, and they just eat it with their bread or whatever it may be, just because it's salty and has a lot of flavor. But I did not enjoy that either. There's a unique dish called холодец, and how I would describe холодец is gelatin, but it's like meat gelatin. So it's basically like solidified grease and fat, and also they love it for the flavor and for the saltiness of it, I think. But those are some unique things that we were fed. Other than that, the food in Russia is pretty bland. Not a lot of spice or kick. As a matter of fact, it's extremely bland. You eat a lot of potatoes, you eat a lot of lettuce, a lot of soups, some rice. Down in the southern parts where I served, where there's Stani people, there's this dish called plov, which is so delicious. It's rice, maybe I say that now because I got used to bland foods, but rice, carrots, some sort of meat, whatever it is, chicken or beef or whatever they decide to use in it, onions and garlic, and then they put a special spice in there, plovsky spice. It's just delicious. We had a family from Uzbekistan that just made the best plov. It was so delicious. Some of the more well-known Russian dishes, soup called borscht, which is a beet soup, and also delicious. It's a beet soup and it has a really red hue to it, but it also consists of potatoes and lettuce and beets, obviously, and onions and carrots, and they say it's not quite done unless you can stick your spoon in it and let go, and the spoon will just stay straight up. It's just so thick with different types of vegetables and meats, and usually they'll try to stew it with a bone with meat around it, or some sort of meat to make it, you know, really thick towards the end. But those are some of the foods that I was exposed to. Oh, another funny story with food is, because Russians have such bland food, we as missionaries would have like taco seasoning sent over to us, and we introduced a lot of Russians to tacos and that concept, and just even putting chili and taco seasoning, like mild taco seasoning on meat for them to try was incredibly spicy. I remember we had new members that we had made tacos for, and they were like borderline upset with us because it was so spicy for them, but it was like mild taco sauce. So I thought that was kind of funny, just that they're used to such bland food that any type of spice, even pepper, is spicy for them. So grocery stores in Russia are getting more modernized, but if you're in a smaller city that you're serving in, they're just small little neighborhood grocery stores, and you'll look at the meat and think, wow, I'm never going to touch that, especially the fish. Matter of fact, in Russia, at least in my mission, we were not allowed to eat any of the fish. And the reason for that is just because where we were at specifically, there was a lot of radiation, a lot of pollution, and the fish were in these rivers and streams that were just heavily polluted, and so they didn't want us to be exposed to any of the pollution through eating the fish. Russians don't eat what we know as a sandwich. Putting bread and meat and cheese and lettuce and another piece of bread on top is kind of an interesting concept to them. Although they have something kind of similar, it's called a buterbrod, and it's like one piece of bread with some meat and cheese on top of it, and that's kind of similar. Some unique foods that I was exposed to. They have a drink that's called Kefir, and it is similar to what we know as buttermilk, but they drink it straight. Some people drink it straight here too, I guess, but I tried that and it was disgusting. Great for buttermilk pancakes though. Another drink that's called kvass, and kvass is similar to like a non-alcoholic beer here. It's made from bread, but it's kind of carbonated too, but it's also disgusting. But something that they really enjoy, especially those who are trying to get away from, alcohol or whatever. They would still have their kvass, which tasted similar to alcohol. Some foods that I ate, there's they love pig fat. There's this, it's called sala, and it's just straight pig fat, and they just eat it with their bread or whatever it may be, just because it's salty and has a lot of flavor, but I did not enjoy that either. There's a unique dish called холодец, and how I would describe холодец is gelatin, but it's like meat gelatin. So it's basically like solidified grease and fat, and also they love it for the flavor and for the saltiness of it, I think. But those are some unique things that we were fed. Other than that, the food in Russia is pretty bland. Not a lot of spice or kick. As a matter of fact, it's extremely bland. You eat a lot of potatoes, you eat a lot of lettuce, a lot of soups, some rice. Down in the southern parts where I served, where there's Stani people, there's this dish called plov, which is so delicious. It's rice. Maybe I say that now because I got used to bland foods, but rice, carrots, some sort of meat, whatever it is, chicken or beef or whatever they decide to use in it, onions and garlic, and then they put a special spice in there, plovsky spice. It's just delicious. We had a family from Uzbekistan that just made the best plov. It was so delicious. Some of the more well-known Russian dishes, soup called borscht, which is a beet soup, and also delicious. It's a beet soup, and it has a really red hue to it, but it also consists of potatoes and lettuce and beets, obviously, and onions and carrots, and they say it's not quite done unless you can stick your spoon in it and let go, and the spoon will just stay straight up. It's just so thick with different types of vegetables and meats, and usually they'll try to stew it with a bone with meat around it, some sort of meat to make it really thick towards the end. But those are some of the foods that I was exposed to. Oh, another funny story with food is because Russians have such bland food, We as missionaries would have like taco seasoning sent over to us, and we introduced a lot of Russians to tacos and that concept, and just even putting chili and taco seasoning, like mild taco seasoning on meat for them to try, was incredibly spicy. I remember we had new members that we had made tacos for, and they were like borderline upset with us because it was so spicy for them, but it was like mild taco sauce. So I thought that was kind of funny, just that they're used to such bland food that any type of spice, even pepper, is spicy for them. So it's kind of interesting.